This is a short video of riding the Hiawatha Trail on September 14th, 2022 with our Lectric XP 2.0 Step-Thru e-bikes. To get ready for the ride, my wife and I watched several of the many YouTube videos about riding the Hiawatha Trail. We learned that what many people do is rent standard mountain bikes at the Lookout Pass Lodge, install a loaner bike rack on their vehicle, transport the rental bikes to the Hiawatha Trailhead, ride the 15 miles to the West Trailhead, stand in line there to take the shuttle service back to the St. Paul Pass Tunnel, sometimes up to 45 minutes, disembark and ride through the long 1.66 mile tunnel to the East Trailhead parking lot, then finally transport the rental bikes back to the Lookout Pass Lodge and go through the rental bike return process. This convinced us to use our own e-bikes and ride the trail both ways. What we couldn't find were videos about riding e-bikes. Having ridden the Hiawatha, we will try to share our experience riding our e-bikes and answer some of the questions we had when preparing for our ride. Question 1. Will the standard electric e-bike batteries provide enough power to ride the trail both ways, a distance of 30 miles, or will we need to bring a set of extra charge batteries or buy extended range batteries? We found the standard batteries had more than enough power to make the 30-mile round trip with battery to spare. I included a picture of my battery gauge in this video, which shows that we still had 50% battery charge remaining. The trail from east to west portals is a very gentle downhill ride. We kept our speed to around 10 miles an hour, and we didn't have to use pedal assist at all. When we got to the bottom of the trail after 15 miles, our battery still had a full charge. It took us about 2.5 hours to make the first leg, and wish we would have taken more time on the way down and stopped at more of the interpretive signs. As we approached the bottom of the trail, we got to a line of people waiting to board the shuttle back up the trail, as you can see in this video. On the day we rode the trail, September 14th, 2022, the line was very short. We read that during the busy season, the line can be blocks long with up to a 45-minute wait. We walked our bikes past those waiting in line and found the rest area with bathrooms and places to picnic. Not surprisingly, most people who were using the rest area were riding e-bikes and were planning to make the return trip. As we enjoyed our picnic, we watched people boarding the shuttle and were impressed at how fast the line moved. When we were getting ready to leave, we gathered up all of our picnic trash and looked for a garbage can and discovered that there aren't any. The Hiawatha Trail is a you haul it in, you haul it out area. On the ride back to the East Portal, we used our e-bike power assist level 2 and 3 to maintain a 12 to 15 mile per hour pace, which actually smoothed out the trail washboarding a little. It took us about an hour and a half to make it back to the East Portal parking lot. Compared to the trip down, there were a few riders going back up the trail. Something that I think is a little crazy. If you decide to only ride the trail one way and take the shuttle service back up, it doesn't take you back to the East Portal parking lot. Instead, it drops you off with your bike at the west end of the 1.66 mile St. Paul Pass Tunnel, and you have to ride back through to get to your vehicle. When we went through the St. Paul Pass Tunnel on our way back, we were behind a group of riders that must have been dropped off by a return shuttle bus. A number of people were obviously struggling through the pitch dark, wet, muddy tunnel. Some were riding very, very slowly or walking their bikes. About a quarter mile into the tunnel, we overtook a mother and daughter having some trouble. The poor mother was trying to encourage her young daughter, maybe 8 to 10 years old, to keep going on her kid's side bicycle. And the young girl was having a difficult time. The bad news is they still had over a mile left to go. I think that most kids who are proficient bicycle riders would probably enjoy the trail ride to the West Portal and love the bus ride back up. But having to ride back through the St. Paul Pass Tunnel might be too much for really young kids. Question 2. Do we have to disable our e-bike throttles? Will the U.S. Forest Service actually check our e-bikes before being allowed on the trail? Granted, this is not a big deal, but it is something we thought other e-bike riders might be interested in. At the start of the ride, we saw a couple of friendly Forest Service rangers answering questions from other riders headed to the tunnel entrance. I thought for sure that they would ask us if our e-bike throttles were disabled. Instead, they reminded us to take off our sunglasses through the tunnel, which turned out to be pathetic, and told us to have a fun ride. After we passed the two rangers, we stopped and chatted with a group of 6 people riding e-bikes and asked them if they had been instructed to turn off their throttles or if their e-bikes had been checked. One gentleman said that he and his wife had ridden the trail on their e-bike several other times over the years and had never been checked or even asked. He was 73, had a knee replacement, and he said he used his throttle to give his knee a rest periodically. As we rode down the trail and stopped to read signs or turn on and off our lights, I asked 3 other e-bike riders if they had disabled their throttles. They all said that they had not, although one gentleman pulled out and showed me his e-bike owner's manual and said he carried the instructions for disabling the throttle in case he got busted. Bottom line, there is a statutory requirement to disable throttles on Class 2 e-bikes, but I don't think it is enforced, nor could I find anyone who had actually done it. Question 3. If after the ride down we didn't have the energy to ride back up, or if our batteries were too low, could we buy shuttle tickets at the bottom without a reservation? We asked that question when we picked up our trail passes at the Lookout Pass Lodge. We were prepared to purchase the return shuttle tickets just in case. They told us we could purchase the refund shuttle trip at the West Trailhead after the ride down, but only accepted cash. Our advice, bring some cash. Question 4. Are the front and back lights that come standard on our electric e-bikes sufficient, or will we need more powerful lights? The answer is yes, you will definitely need additional lights. The Hiawatha Trail begins with the St. Paul Pass Tunnel, which is 8,771 feet long. That's 1.66 miles. It is pitch dark, cold, muddy, wet with water dripping from the ceiling and walls, streams of water running down both sides of the tunnel, and potholes full of muddy water you want to avoid. Our electric e-bikes did come with front and rear lights, but they are not nearly enough to make it safely through the tunnel. You really need additional lighting to keep you from running into the tunnel sides or hitting a muddy pothole and taking a nasty fall onto the muddy trail. There are a total of 10 tunnels on the trail. Some are fairly short and don't require a light, but several are much longer and darker, and you'll need more light. We purchased a couple of light kits that included a front rechargeable 3,000 lumen handlebar light and a rear blinking red light that straps onto the rear seat post. These additional front and rear lights work great. I have included the Amazon link if you're interested in these add-on lights. Another good piece of advice regarding the St. Paul Pass Tunnel: bring a jacket or a windbreaker and even consider light gloves. The tunnel is really cold and damp, and it will take you 12 to 15 minutes to get through, and much longer if you decide to walk. When we rode the trail, it was a mild 75-degree day, but we would have froze in the tunnel if we had not been wearing jackets. 5. If we bring our own e-bikes, do we have to stop at the Lookout Pass Lodge to pick up our trail passes, or can we go directly to the East Trailhead and pick them up there? We found that if you buy the trail passes online, you'll have to pick them up at the Lookout Pass Lodge, which is right off Exit 0 on Interstate 90. If you don't buy trail passes online, you can buy them the day of your ride at the trailhead, but you'll need cash. We met a couple in the parking lot who had purchased their trail passes online, but assumed that they could get them at the trailhead. Not sure, but we assumed that they had to repurchase their trail passes to avoid driving back to the Lookout Pass Lodge. Our advice: order trail passes online in advance and pick them up the day before or early in the morning of your ride, or bring some cash and buy them at the trailhead. 6. Is the Hiawatha Trail in good shape and easy to ride? First of all, the 1.66 mile St. Paul Pass Tunnel was deceptively smooth until we discovered we were riding through a thin, muddy slurry with muddy potholes you'll really need to avoid. Fenders, which the rental bikes don't have, really help keep you from getting that muddy streak up your back. I included a picture of our bikes taken after our ride to show how much mud you'll ride through. After the first tunnel, the trail is graveled and is wide and smooth up until you get to the bike-only part of the trail, which I believe is about 3 miles from the start. Up until then, the road is shared with bikers, buses, and trucks. When you get to the bikers-only part of the trail, it narrows and is much rougher with some washboarding. The trestle roadbeds are smoother. We speculate that since we rode the trail at the end of the season, the trail was probably at its roughest. 7. Is it worth the time to stop and read all the interpretive signs along the trail? Did we stop and read all the interpretive signs? No, but in hindsight we wish we would have. The Hiawatha website says that there are 47 signs on the trail. We stopped and read maybe 6 to 8 of the signs, and we felt guilty every time we passed one. Some signs had a crowd of people around them, which lessened our guilt at not stopping. We rationalized not stopping because we were worried about how much time it would take us to ride the 30-mile round trip. It turned out we would have had plenty of time, and we should have spent more time reading the interpretive signs and just enjoying the whole experience. Good news, if you miss any of the signs, they can be viewed online at the ridethehiawatha.com website. If we had it to do over again, we would read the interpretive signs online before riding the trail. 8. Where should we stay before and after our ride? We stayed in the small historic town of Wallace, Idaho, which is just a few miles west of the Exit 5 and the Hiawatha Trailhead. Wallace is an old silver mining town that had burnt down in the 1910 forest fire and was rebuilt and essentially frozen in time by being put on the National Registry of Historic Places. We got to Wallace the day before our ride and stayed in the Brooks Hotel. Like the town, the Brooks Hotel is right out of the 1950s with real metal room keys, an old-fashioned lounge where locals hang out, and a great restaurant that is open at 6 a.m. The staff of the hotel were very friendly, and they let us put our e-bikes in their banquet room overnight for security. Across the street from the hotel, you can catch the Wallace Historical Trolley Ride and Mine Tour. Our tour guide provided colorful commentary of the interesting and sometimes dark history of Wallace. We learned that Wallace had declared itself the center of the universe, and the trolley drove right over the precise location, which is a manhole cover in the main street. The tour guide told us that the movie Dante's Peak was filmed in Wallace sometime in the 90s and starred a young Pierce Bronson. We watched it in our room on our iPad the evening of our ride. It was actually pretty good, with more action and less romance. We ate at a couple of really great restaurants recommended by our tour guide, the Blackboard Cafe and the City Limits Pub and Grill. We heard that the Fainting Goat Wine Bar and Restaurant was good, but it was closed both days we stayed in Wallace. Our number one recommendation, try the lamb shanks with yellow curry mashed potatoes at the Blackboard Cafe. If you're planning to ride the Hiawatha Trail, don't miss Wallace, Idaho. Did we enjoy the ride? Anything interesting happen? Would we do it again? Yes, we really enjoyed the round-trip Hiawatha Trail ride. As I mentioned, the ride down from the East Portal was a gentle downhill slope with beautiful views from the 7 trestles you cross. You'll get a lot more out of your ride by stopping and reading the interpretive signs, or even better, reading them online before you ride the trail. A few funny things happened to us that made the Hiawatha Trail ride even more interesting. The first thing, my wife forgot to take her sunglasses off before entering the first tunnel, even though the ranger stationed at the start of the tunnel entrance kept repeating to everyone to be sure to take their sunglasses off. Even after it got pitch dark, she didn't realize that she was wearing sunglasses and was absolutely freaking out and complaining about the crummy 3,000 lumen lights I had bought. We have Bluetooth helmets that let us talk to each other. More on that later. When she rode back through the tunnel in the other direction without her sunglasses, she was surprised at how much brighter and easier it was. The second funny thing that happened, at the beginning of the trail at the tunnel entrance, there was a tour group waiting to start the ride together. As we approached them, a lady in the tour group started shouting at us and other riders to move along and get out of their way so that they could head off together. Later down the trail, the same tour group caught up with us at one of the interpretive signs. There, the same lady jumped off her bike and started shouting, pass on the left, to riders still coming down the trail. Evidently, she felt that the sign area was for the tour group only and no one else should stop. We were loitering around the sign, and she gave us the evil eye. We beat a hasty retreat and made sure we stayed in front of the tour group with the bossy lady. Incidentally, after our second encounter, we never saw the tour group with the bossy lady on the rest of the way down or going back up the trail. We speculate that either the group mutinied and disbanded, or they had a special pickup location which we heard large groups can arrange. I would have mutinied. Would we ride the Hiawatha Trail again? My wife and I agree that we would like to ride the trail again. My wife more because she likes our stay in Wallace, Idaho, with its 1950s charm, great people, and gourmet restaurants. I would like to go back if I could piggyback a guided fishing excursion in either Idaho or Montana. One last thing, I mentioned earlier that we have Bluetooth helmets. When we first started riding e-bikes, we really had trouble communicating. We were always having to yell at each other. We had the typical, "I can't hear you. What did you say? What? Never mind," conversation. Even worse, one of us would stop for some reason and the other would keep going and not realize it for miles. To solve our communication problem, we purchased helmets with Bluetooth microphones and speakers that allow us to talk to each other while we ride. These helmets make bike riding more enjoyable, and up to 4 helmets can be paired together in case you ride with another couple with the same helmets. As I mentioned earlier, these helmets let me enjoy my wife's running commentary while she freaked out through the long St. Paul Pass tunnel with her sunglasses on. I've included the Amazon link to these helmets. I think that sums up our Hiawatha Trail ride on our Lectric e-bikes. Thanks for watching.